You ever hear about one of those shows that just had everything going for it? You know, a great premise, a huge network, a cast full of future superstars, and then, poof, it just vanished? Well, today we're opening up a cold case file on a show that did exactly that.
Yeah, we're diving into a supernatural drama called Wolf Lake. It hit the airwaves back in the fall of 2001, and then it was gone after just 5 episodes. It left behind this mystery that honestly has had cult TV fans buzzing for more than 20 years now.
I mean, just try to picture this. A big primetime show on CBS, we're talking one of the biggest networks in the world, gets canceled so fast that they didn't even bother to air 4 of the episodes they had already finished. When a show gets pulled off the schedule that quickly, you just know something major must have happened.
Okay, so our first piece of evidence is, of course, the show itself. Before we can figure out why it disappeared, we've got to understand the strange, super secretive world it was trying to build. So let's dive in and see what exactly made the town of Wolf Lake tick.
Right off the bat, this series wasn't your typical Monster of the Week horror fest. Nope, it was what you'd call a supernatural soap. The creator, John Leakley, had this idea to treat the werewolves less like, mindless monsters and more like a super wealthy, powerful, and really dramatic dynasty. We're talking backstabbing politics, intense family feuds, the whole deal.
So the whole thing kicks off with a Seattle police detective, John Kanan. His fiancée, Ruby, vanishes into thin air right after he proposes. His only clue? It leads him to her supposed hometown, Wolf Lake. But here's the thing. This place doesn't seem to exist on any map. He gets there and quickly finds out the entire town is secretly run by werewolves. So now he's this total outsider trying to solve a crime where literally everyone is a suspect, and every single person is hiding this huge supernatural secret.
And what's really interesting here is that the main conflict wasn't just, humans versus werewolves. The real drama was actually a class war between the werewolves. You had the wealthy, powerful pack living up on the hill, trying to blend in with society, versus the poorer, more traditionalist pack that lived out in the wild.
All right, let's move on to our next piece of evidence, because this is where the mystery really deepens. The cast for this forgotten show is, honestly, it's kind of shocking. It was absolutely loaded with well-known actors, and even more incredible, some huge future superstars.
So anchoring the whole thing, you had some really familiar faces. Lou Diamond Phillips was our determined human detective. You had Tim Matheson playing the ruthless pack alpha who's also the town sheriff. And then the legendary Graham Greene as this town elder just trying to keep the peace between everyone.
Okay, but this is where it gets really wild. See that rebellious, angsty teenage werewolf, Luke Cates? He was played by this young actor credited as Paul Wasilewski. Sound familiar? It should. Today you know him as Paul Wesley, the star of that massive hit, The Vampire Diaries. Yep, he was getting his supernatural heartthrob practice in right here.
And the talent scouting didn't stop there, not by a long shot. Luke's love interest, the sheriff's daughter who's caught right in the middle of all this pack drama, was played by a teenage Mary Elizabeth Winstead. This was years, and I mean years, before she became the star we know from movies like 10 Cloverfield Lane and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
So let's recap for a second. We've got this fascinating premise, a killer cast, which brings us to the biggest question of all. Why on earth did it disappear? Well, the motive, the reason for its cancellation, really boils down to just one single word: timing.
The entire key to this whole case really comes down to one specific date, September 19th, 2001. That's the night Wolf Lake premiered. And that date is so important because it was just 8 days after the September 11th attacks had completely shaken the entire country, and really the whole world. Think about it. In the weeks and months after 9/11, what were audiences looking for on TV? They wanted comfort, they wanted heroism, escapism. So a dark, moody, paranoid thriller about a secret community of monsters hiding in plain sight? It was the exact opposite of what the country was in the mood for. That whole theme of hidden enemies living among us just hit way, way too close to home.
So after CBS pulled the plug, the episodes they hadn't aired were eventually just burned off on the much smaller UPN network the next year. And look at this drop in viewership. It's just dramatic. The show went from a pretty respectable 8.7 million viewers for its debut on CBS, all the way down to just 2.6 million when it re-premiered on UPN. All of its momentum was just gone.
But the story doesn't just end there with bad ratings. Nope. Like any good supernatural story, Wolf Lake wasn't truly dead. After it got canceled, it started to build this really surprising afterlife, and it slowly grew this legacy as a true cult classic.
So even with the terrible timing and the low ratings,
the show wasn't totally slammed by critics. Actually, some of the reviews were pretty positive. Ron Wertheimer from the New York Times called the first episode a promisingly quirky pilot, which really suggested that, hey, this thing had some real potential.
And now for the final and I think most unbelievable twist in this whole case. Are you ready for this? This show, the one that was canceled after only 5 episodes, was actually nominated for 2 Primetime Emmy Awards.
When you look at the whole story, Wolf Lake is just the perfect example of a show that was in exactly the wrong place at exactly the wrong time. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other great shows are out there, just kind of buried by history, waiting for someone to rediscover them?
Hey, if you had fun cracking this case with us, do us a favor and hit that like button, and definitely subscribe for more explainers like this one. And we really want to know, so drop a comment below, what's a forgotten show that you loved that got canceled way too soon? Who knows? We might just investigate it for our next one.